Welcome to the March meeting of the Beverly Airport Commission. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to announce, is there anybody on the hybrid?
There is no one present.
No one present. I do also want to make an announcement this evening. Our meeting is being recorded. We'll go ahead and jump to the acceptance of the minutes. Everybody get a chance to look at last month's minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Mr. Henry? Mr. Doxey seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Carries unanimously. The reading of the financial reports. Turn over to you, Steve.
Yes. Good evening, Commission and everybody in the audience. Reading the February numbers for Beverly Regional Airport. We show very good numbers. We show for our traffic counts, right off the top, we show an increase in traffic. We show our February this year of 2023 of 5,570. Last year's count of February 22 was 4,198, which we show an increase of 1,372 flights. That does translate into landing fee revenue and fuel flow revenue. We currently show our fuel flow has increased, not significant, but yet it shows an increase. Our fuel flow revenue for February of 2023 is $5,122 versus last year, February 2022, $4,673, or was an increase of $449.50. The landing fee revenue does also show an increase. It shows 70 landing fees collected this year of 2023 versus 69 landing fees of last year, 2022. The landing fee revenue of February 2023, $7,202 versus last year's landing fees of February 2022 of $6,945 for an increase of $256. And just as an additional note, if you put January and February together versus January, February, so this year, January, February has shows the 2 months shows a total of 11,401 flights or traffic counts versus last year, January, February of 8,751, which is a 2,650 flight increase.
Shows you what good weather does, doesn't it?
It does. It shows the good weather as well as the demand for flying. So that would wrap up the financial reports. If anybody has any questions or concerns, I'm happy to.
I have a question for you.
Yes. Okay. All right. And exactly. The only other thing.
Can I just, we're not accepting
Oh, okay.
questions from the.
No, it wasn't actually a question. It was a note that possibly. We do have a new commissioner on board, as well as we did have.
I will allow that.
Right.
I will allow that. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Well, we're gonna get to the
Maybe
chairman's
business.
comments.
Yes.
Let's get through this, and I'll get to the chairman's comments where it'll get its proper due.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
we'll do that.
Wonderful.
But I appreciate the enthusiasm by our camera presence tonight. So.
Well, that's great. Exactly. So I think at this point here, if there's no questions, we might then defer to. We'll let you continue running the meeting.
Okay. Well, here's something. Anybody have any questions on the snapshot at all with the color coded loveliness? We'll get into this later, but it's always interesting to get the city's perspective on the financial stability of the airport. So we keep seeing these,
Right.
positive numbers. What they do with them and where it goes is another topic of conversation. Okay. Need a motion to accept the financial reports.
So motion?
Ms. Zuber, I'm gonna get used to the new names, and Commissioner Doxy seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Airport Solutions Group. Craig, thank you so much.
Craig Schutz with Airport Solutions Group. I'm summary of some of the projects that I've been working on behalf of the airport. For the new commissioners, I just want to say, so I work with Airport Solutions Group, we're airport engineers for the Beverly Airport. We're hired usually on a 5-year contract. We get reselected every 5 years, it goes up for an RFP type thing. So any projects that happen on the airport, we work closely with the airport managers here and the commission as well for any project. So my name's Craig Schutz.
Just to bring it right up to date, that 5-year contract is up. Am I
It's coming
correct?
up, right?
So, and it is a process.
It's a process.
It is a process. It will require a subcommittee. RFP will go out. The city usually helps with that. But competing, aeronautical engineering firms will put bids in, and the subcommittee will make a recommendation to the board. Anyway, I'll let you continue.
Anyway, so the first project, the airport master plan, that's getting close to being really finalized, meaning right now the airport layout plan is out for signature, so this is the final step. Meaning we sent it to Beverly Airport, we signed off on it, Master Aeronautics signed off on it, and now it's in FAA's hands right now. And I sent that on March 7th to the FAA for signatures, and hopefully they'll sign that soon. So I'll follow up with them in another week or so.
And just to reiterate, once they sign off on the airport layout plan,
Yeah,
where does the entire process go from there? Are there more signatures?
no, that's it.
That's it?
That's it, and then I can
So-
close the project out.
Okay.
I'll print out, full size set of plans for the airport master plan, let our airport layout plans from that here at the office, and that's it.
Okay.
Speed done, and I can just close it out. Okay, so any question on the master plan? Okay, so the next project that we've come up this year is we're doing an aeronautical study for runway 1634 and 927. It's coming out of the master plan. One of the projects identified is the reconstruction of 1634. But before we can do that, the FAA requires you to do an airspace study because you want to make sure all your approaches are clear of any obstructions. So that's good. That is at the beginning of the process. Right now, it's probably going to take a year to do. And so right now, we have a pre-design scope review. Go ahead, Josh.
When you're done, I have a question.
Sure. You want us now, or?
Well, it goes back to the master plan.
Yeah.
Once that's finalized and signed, and the stuff you're talking about, does that mean it's given to us and that becomes the guiding document
Yeah.
for the airport?
Yeah.
And we follow that plan as part of our agendas?
Yeah, your yearly, your CI, your capital improvement programs every year that you meet, yeah, that is kind of helps guide what you're trying to do.
And we'll be coordinating with the airport manager on this and moving forward on it?
Right.
Yeah, I assume that the airport manager comes on, probably have to come and sit with them and, obviously get him up to speed on CIP plan and all that, so.
Just to clarify, and it's never really been reiterated, very often, in my 7 years, 7.5, we keep moving back and forth, almost 8. The master plan is a document that is, to some degree, here's a kind of a wish list that things that could or may not happen over the next 20 years. Nobody has any idea what's actually gonna happen over 20 years. Most of the document sits, we've never, as a commission, ever sat down and go through, okay, what's next on our list? It really isn't that. It's more, in my understanding, my observation is that ASG uses it, identifying in a long list of, most of it was just technical, runways, lights, radar, all that kind of stuff, and identifying a large, that the reconstruction, and that project, FYI, the reconstruction of that runway has been kicked down the can. Is that a phone or a cat in here?
It must be.
Anyway, is that yours? Okay. Anyway, just let you know that the reconstruction of that runway has been kicked down the road for about 10 years. It is, it's always been on there. And eventually, like many of the projects that are in there, it's like, well, do you want to do this? Or and it's one thing to put it on paper and say, we could do this over the next 20 years. It's another thing for the commission and the city to say, we're going to fund these projects.
Right.
That's why the vast majority are just like, doing the studies for the taxiway, But it might be an interesting process for the commission to sit down once it's finalized, but there's nothing stopping us doing it right now, to be honest with you.
Is it like a reference document that?
It is, but you know, yes, those projects are the ones you identified about 20 years, like Paul said, is a planning document, right? The immediate need is to reconstruct 1634 and parallel taxiway echo from the ramp out to end of 16. So that way you eliminate that crossing at Alpha, that after you identify, they don't like that crossing, because it's considered a geometry problem issue. Obviously, it helps the better operations if you grab each side over here to go down to 16. So those are the two big projects, but that's, like I said, there is, first we gotta do an aeronautical study, then next year we gotta do permitting. That's probably gonna take a year and a half to permit. You know, so you're already 2 years out. By the time you get to design this thing and construct it, you're probably still almost 4 to 5 years out before you can just get that. And that's why those two projects on, if you look at your master plan, you might have, I forget how many other projects in there, but
Okay.
because projects just take so a long time to implement, so.
Do you undertake most of the work behind that and coordinate with the airport manager, let them know what you're planning as far as your
absolutely.
engineering? So you guys are kind of running it behind the scenes?
Yeah, we always with the
coordinating
airport
with us and the
manager.
airport manager?
We take guys from the airport manager, and you have one here, the other ones, we help them identify projects too, but it comes down to the airport manager, what they think is important to the airport and the commission, and that, it's all interchangeable, we'll work together on that.
But you're essentially a contractor, like where you
I'm
actually?
I'm a designer,
Yeah.
so engineer behind it, so when you needed to get it implemented, like, okay, what's the steps to, you gotta run or reconstruct it, well, it's not just designing, we gotta do an aeronautical study, because that requires it, you're gonna do permitting, as a step, and then we can get to design, but all that stuff just takes time.
And the manager's checking with you and you're briefing him that?
Yep,
that's-
absolutely.
You're doing this
Yep.
at this stage, he knows, and we
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely, just by these updates, these monthly updates for sure, but definitely when the airport manager's here, he knows, almost daily, but, he always knows what's going on.
And to clarify also, the master plan is 20-25 years. The short term, if you want to call it 5-year cycle, the more useful guide really is the CIP, the capital improvement plan. And that's an annual meeting that we have with the FAA. It's about a 40-minute meeting, and they say, here's year one moving forward, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, okay. And really the only thing that we talked about, again, was just moving the runway construction from 2 years out to basically 4 years out. Because the city had no real knowledge, with the absence of a working manager, had no knowledge that that construction project was on the board, and it was probably gonna take a $600,000 bond by the city. So I said, we need, can we roll it back? And the FAA said, yeah, there's no problem, let's move it back. And the only other things that were on that list were all in support, studies in support of that construction. And then there was snow removal building, which they just said, no, that's not gonna happen. Thanks, come back sometime down the road.
So these are the things that's all approved in the plan, things that have been looked at in the
Yeah,
general
I think
sense.
it's looked at on
We can
MassDOT.
go reference as a commission if we have questions, and then,
Yeah.
because it's so basic in scope, then we sit down and talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yes, exactly, it's a
Okay,
phone document, everyone
so-
knows about it.
So what's the aeronautical study actually looking for? You said it was sort of clearances, what kind of clearances?
Yeah, so you have these approaches to your runway ends, right? An airplane flies in at a certain angle, right? And these are imaginary approaches. And it's a plane. You've got to keep those clear because you don't want a plane hitting obstruction, right?
Is this in addition to the annual ones that they do for the IFR plates anyway? Or
No,
is
this is a lot more in depth. We hire a specialized sub consultant who actually takes $1 million camera in a plane, basically flies over your approaches. FAA has total guidance on how you do that, and basically it shoots down radar, LiDAR, whatever they call it, and you get a picture of like tree canopies and other structures, and then you get points, elevations, and then you got to start analyzing those points versus your approaches.
Does that expire at any certain point because the trees grow?
Yeah, no, but we do take that into consideration. So the reason why we're doing it primarily is the last time you did one was in 2010. So it's been a while, so that's why we said we should do one. If it was like 4 or 5 years old, generally FAA's good with that. There's no official expiration, but what we do is when we analyze it, we don't just look for the actual obstruction, we'll also look at it 5 feet below the surface and 10 feet to allow for growth. So, we won't just necessarily cut the tree right at the obstruction, but maybe go a little lower, and get a little bit of area, so it gives you time. Because absolutely, because you just cut those trees, there might be other trees that are close, but you didn't do them, but in 2 years there are obstructions again. so, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, again, that's the purpose of the aeronautical study, just to make sure, because anytime you do a runway, you gotta make sure your approaches are clear. And that's what that's for, in case, because something might still come up, if we do the analysis now, and we find out there are obstructions off your property, if there are, then we gotta figure out what to do with them, if we can do anything with them. Right, because then we have a little, might have to switch the plan a little bit, but we won't know until we do that little study. Okay. So like I said, that's this year. So like I said, right now, we just did a draft scope of work, it's out for review to the airport, FAA, MassDOT, Aeronautics Division, and I expect a comment section this week. And then once I get those back, then I have to create my fee, and then, Paul, I know I talked to you, the airport's gonna have to hire an independent fee estimator. It's per FAA requirement, anytime costs are $100,000 or more, you have to hire an independent fee estimator. All that is I'll give them my scope of work, they come up with their fee, I come up with my fee, and then you basically compare them, right? It's just a checks and balances thing, to make sure that, hey, I'm not too high, or I'm not too low, or whatever, and you negotiate the fee from there, then we can start the work.
Is that in lieu of going out for bid?
Right, because we're under, because, like I said, the way the airports work is, you don't bid out each project separately for an airport. The airport selects a consultant for 3 to 5 years. Beverly's been doing 5 years. So like I said, ours is coming up again. So when that happens, you'll send an RFP out, and you're gonna get other firms that come in, and then you're gonna interview them, almost like you did for the airport manager. You're gonna look at them, how many you get, do you want to shortlist them, do you want interviews and all that, and then eventually the commission will pick their engineer for the next 5 years. That's
Well,
it.
engineer firm.
What's that?
And your airport solution group, we're not picking you, we're picking airport solution group, correct?
No, you have a choice. You might not pick us again. You might be.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Tech.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When I say you, we go with the airport solution group, we're not going with Craig Schuster,
No, right,
correct?
yeah.
Because I remember when I was at the city council a month ago, I got up and said, someone asked about it, who's assisting with us in the absence of the manager. And I said there were about 15 employees at Airport
Yep.
Solutions. I'm just curious, how many are,
Yeah, it's about right.
about 15,
Yeah.
mostly engineers?
Yep,
You guys cover how many airports?
7 in Massachusetts.
7, okay.
And do we-
Moving on, okay.
Do we have consistent representation then, or they moved between the employees there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand. When you,
So if we were to hire your firm,
Yeah.
would you most likely be the representative that we'd be dealing with, or would we trade it to another?
no, it's me.
Amazingly, Craig working for 2 or 3
Three
different firms, but he's
Been
always
there.
he's been our engineer at all these 3 different for
23 years.
23 years. But with the support of ASG, so.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go on to number 3?
Yeah, we'll go on.
Okay, let's go on.
Well, the cold storage building, I'm just keeping that on here, still nothing from MassDOT and funding. That's just been a struggle, but we'll just keep it on there because you never know when funding might come available. I know the airport needs cold storage building to put remoting equipment and other stuff undercover to keep it out of the weather, but that's it. Unless anyone has any further questions.
Thank you, Craig.
I'll stick one
Oh, I
for
have
you.
one question.
Go ahead.
What's happening with the fence? I know a couple of months ago, we talked about,
Yeah.
doing
So-
a fence
So
survey.
what we'll have to do is we'll have to engage MassDOT again. The director over there has not been responsive.
The engineering director.
If I can jump in, we were told by MassDOT, right, that we had an issue with Galaxy's invoices.
Yeah,
And MassDOT was the one that told us even 3 months ago, until the city pays those bills for this vendor that handles the security of technology of our gates, right?
Yes, Galaxy.
That's fine.
Yes.
Anyway, but they said, we don't want to entertain any more conversations about additional dollars for something like this until this gets resolved. And the city, it's an unbelievably cumbersome process. I mean, we've been working with the city for a full 2.5 months, back and forth, who's got it, and, trying to get those invoices, some of them were backdated 1.5 years, signed and paid. So I don't know if Mass DOT, maybe they're happy that we've made all this initiative with the city, with the grant office and the auditor's office and the treasurer's office, they're all trying to get multiple accounts, and it's going back and forth between Nikki, but I just know that Mass DOT is not happy right now with
As far as
us.
I know, they're fine.
Okay, so
So I
they're,
think, as I had some, this is a month and a half ago or whatever, I saw some emails going back and forth between the city, Nikki, and Holland,
Right.
and the MassDOT, that it was in the works. I don't know if it's been resolved totally, but as far as I know, you should be okay. You know, as far as the fence, so there's no guarantee MassDOT would ever fund the fence, right? So, and they operate on a June 30th timeline, like they like to spend their funds. And I think it's too late this year to do it. And plus, they have not been responsive in saying, yes, let's get together and let's do it. However, you can always, if you have funds yourself, you can always repair it, as long as you follow the right, the bidding guidelines, if you're already, depending on it, you can always get it fixed and get reimbursed later, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't, I just, because MassDOT, that's what they always tell me, they say, hey, we're just a reimbursement agency, I know airports rely on us, but you can't rely on them to come up with money necessarily to fix the fence. If you gotta fix the fence, you gotta find a way to fix the fence, and you can go back and ask for the money.
Right.
That's what they tell me.
Do we have the money?
well, we can discuss that, whether, possibly, but the question is, what do we want to do with that, do we want to throw $100,000? Like, it's a large.
Yeah, if it's that, like I said, you gotta, as long as you follow the master laws for bidding, and you do that, MassDOT will consider a reimbursement, but if you just call, if the company come and repair it, that's not the correct way of doing it, so that's why I just forewarn you on that.
I mean, as far as having available funds, the question is, how large of it, we have to go out for a bid, I would assume. I mean, just an estimate, to find out, just, curiosity, how much of a repair job are we talking about, and what
Well,
that.
no, I'm gonna have to defer to Steve or Dave, and if you're just looking to repair versus replacing the big section of the fence, the big, which we went permitting a number of years ago to do, right? If
Right.
you're just repairing sections, 30, 40 feet at a time, well, I don't know what that's gonna cost, but it's obviously cheaper than replacing the whole fence.
Right,
And that's probably what we should be going for, is trying to get the emergency repair, just to repair those sections.
right. Question would be, what would be an estimate? And we don't.
I'd have to talk to Steve again, I know he
Right.
sent me some pictures and stuff, but we might have to come out and just measure the areas in what I think should get repaired.
Right.
Because we did something similar many years ago, at the end of 2007, that fence down the bottom there by San Fonso, because the snow and everything, that thing bent over, so we did emergency repair, well, we did to MassDOT for 200 feet of fence there.
We'll add that to the desk of the new manager when he arrives.
So, okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else?
All right, so
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to stay for the whole meeting, so I can take care of something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Craig, thanks a lot. We'll move on to the chairman's report. I will tell you, all you mostly know, I spent quite a amount of time in the filing cabinet looking for some documents of old, and found quite a bit about the commission. The way I remember, even when Peter and I came on, the chairman's report was always in there, and you'll see it under old business. I don't want to jump ahead, but there were committees. Some of them were way too thin, but there was structure there. And part of the problem with the city not filling vacancies, and we'll touch upon that short order, if you don't have the bodies around the table, you can't really effectively have subcommittees. The same people always going to be on the subcommittees, So that's one of the reasons we need to find out, how quickly we can get I know Danvers has a position open. Beverly now has 2 positions open. Everybody here, I don't know, I was just notified that one of our commissioners had resigned today. Jeff Schlitke, pilot, former trainer, I haven't read the email, but I guess it has to do with life balances and kids. And I will tell you, I was also surprised. I found out that in the 3-year period before I came to the commission, 2 commissioners dropped dead while they were on the commission. They had lived full, long lives. What I'm saying is, the commission was full of elder statesmen, okay? Versus some the commissioners are very busy. And it's a different demographic, and I don't know, but, and even at the time, the chairman was in his advanced years as well. So there's two gentlemen passed away, and the chairman himself was 85 plus years old. I'm on a couple other boards, and I know that when you start getting people where their lives are very busy, it's a conflict. So that's,
Most of those guys were all, long since retired and had, different jobs in aviation and lots of knowledge. And
Right.
they were able to spend time that a lot of us are unable to do.
right, and I'll get onto that. So in short order, I want to at least thank our brand new commissioner, Jesse Zubrick. So welcome, Jesse. The willingness to step up and serve the community and the airport. I know you got your pilot's license several years ago. I'm going to let you give 1 or 2 minutes of who you are and just educate us and welcome.
Well, in short, the way I got involved here is that I did receive my private pilot license from Beverly Flight Center on the other side of the field in 2016, and just got my IFR a year and a half ago. So I love this airport, been involved with lots of people here, and it's a very important place to me. And I'm a resident of Beverly, and been there for 10 years.
And if you don't mind, you work in the comptroller's office of the state,
Yes,
So-
I'm the statewide budget team manager for the comptroller's office.
So, besides being a pilot, you've got the financial background, which, those skills are highly coveted, at least by this commission. Especially the pilot skills, and we lost Jeff, we've got Josh and yourself now. I think it's important to have people knowledgeable of what pilots experience, so your skills and experience are gonna be very welcome, so we're glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
That being said, I will pass out, I'll send this around, you want. And you pass this, and I'll wait till everybody gets a chance to see it. But I also will tell you that the mayor of Beverly communicated to myself that he had, as both Peter and I have voiced our dates of stepping down. Not the dates, it's a process. It's when the new manager gets here, and we're gonna have a couple meetings with the new manager. But he said he had 2 people lined up. But I will tell you that I found this in the Beverly Charter, which has great sway over ordinances of any kind. It does say that once an opening occurs on a commission or a board, and there are 40 different boards and commissions in the city of Beverly, that if 30 days go by from the city receiving written notice from that body, the body is then eligible to fill it with whoever they want. Yeah. So that's something to be thinking about as we move forward. You all saw the email that I sent off to the city where I told, we have not had 9 people on this commission in 6 years. And the city became very comfortable with not filling positions. And it's not just this board. I know that the city of Beverly has taken some heat, and that's that there were way too many boards, way too many vacancies. But most of those boards do not have a daily operation of this magnitude. So I don't know if we're going to go to this, but it is clearly allowed. And whether it makes someone happy or not in City Hall, that's a possibility that we may invoke whatever we have at our disposal to meet the needs of. I'll just, any word from Danvers at all? No is an acceptable answer.
No, I will just say generally that your story of the difficulty at filling spaces on volunteer boards is, I think, a universal problem.
Right.
But I don't know where we're at. I've obviously forwarded our vacancy and a request for potential candidates. Supposedly the town of Danvers is doing a broader, hey, community members, we need this person, this person. So
Well,
I gave my info to that effort a while ago, and I do not know if that has hit the street yet. I'm guessing not.
Well, we sent six sets of resumes to City Hall. One of them, I just went back and checked the other day. One of them was a Danvers resident, a doctor, works downtown, but he's a pilot.
Okay.
And he responded to my email 4 months ago. I might just give that to you.
Yes, if you.
And there are other individuals that are interested, I know, and we may have to, as a group, vet do it ourselves. I mean, there's no process outlined in this as far as if we so choose to move forward on our own.
Have you had any conversation with the city on this?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I've talked to a couple of individuals that were involved in writing the charter. Yes.
That's gonna go over big.
Yeah, that's gonna go over real big. Because I will tell you that the chairman, Fuzzy Faustic, went to the city over this topic, I believe, that's my understanding. And he made so many friends that the friends realized, wow, his 3-year term is up this month. And we never saw him again. Okay, so anyway, but I think all of you should keep that in your back pocket or put in your airport file or whatever, because this comes right out of the Beverly Charter, which is online. Okay, so we have a missing, and we have 2 from Beverly now, and 1 from Danvers. So, okay, I'm gonna move on from there. I will touch upon the manager position. I think everybody knows, I will make it known. The new manager has accepted the position. I got an email today from HR, that there's physical and all that kind of stuff is being done out in Illinois. All that has been completed. I will tell everybody that the new manager is going to have a baby in 4 weeks. Well, we do, and please keep your comments to yourself, please. We weren't gonna bring somebody out here, while their wife is having a baby back home, and then, so the city and the commission agreed that we're going to allow him to show up June 5th. And in the meantime, we will continue with the wonderful coverage that we're getting from Airport Solutions. So we're excited about that, and can't wait to have the new manager.
One question.
Yes.
You said 2 Beverly, 1 Danvers, but it's now 3 Beverly, because Jeff?
No,
Because we have 6 here.
we have 6 and there's 9 seats
Yeah, so.
allowed. So 1 from
Okay.
1 from Danvers and 2 from Beverly. So, I'll just go down, I'll give you a recap. It's been a very full month, to say the very least. After I spoke before the city council on February 6th, I then had a breakfast with City Councilor Todd Rotundo. He was very excited about what was going on at the airport. He then came out to the airport a week later, and Josh and Jason and I, and Steve was there, he thoroughly went through Building 45, gave us his perspective as working with the city council. We then drove him back to the airport road properties and continued the conversation. And he was incredibly supportive of many of the things that I had brought up for the city council. He had some ideas as far as working with the city, a lot of it, getting things done. He was very much of a hands-on individual. I was grateful for that. I will then tell you, last week I brought the president of the city council, Julie Flowers, out here. She toured this building with me, and she toured 45 and Airport Road. And again, you saw the email that I just sent out as a notice that she was very appreciative of the tour. And I will tell you, if all you know, that the city council also hooked us up with their budget analyst, Mr. Jerry Perry. We met with him, again, it was Josh and Jason and myself. We did the same tour, came back in here, and we sat for a total of 2.5 hours with him. A very enlightening perspective on the city's perspective, if I can double use that word, about many things, the finances, what's available. I just, to share with all of you, at the end of the 2.5 hours, I said, I give you his background. He's a retired gentleman. He's in the position of a budget analyst. That position was created 25 years ago by the city of Beverly because they were in huge financial problems at the time. And I guess the mayor's office and they were pointing figures at the city council and they're going back and forth. So they created this budget analyst, basically to keep the city out of trouble. And a person was in that position for 20 years. That person left. And he's been he's retired, and he worked for the Department of Revenue for the state, and he was really a fixer. He went around to all these cities that had troubles with their spending was too high and their taxes were too low and everything, and in between, he worked in the city of Chelsea. He had lots of exposure to airports around the Commonwealth, and he's been working for 6 years, technically working for the city council, but really close, working to the control of money isn't really with the city council, it's really with the mayor and the financial director and development. So he gave us an interesting perspective. I will tell you, at the end of the 2.5 hours, I said, here's what I'm hearing. Number one, the city of Beverly really doesn't want to spend any additional money on building 45 on its own, not knowing what, because I heard many things at the city council, and I had hopes that they were going to be able to find resources, grants, whatever. And he said, basically, that's true. The city is not big into throwing money at that building at this point in time. And again, they see it as their asset. Number two, he said, you've probably got enough money in your bank, in our enterprise fund, to spend some of your own money on that building. But then it goes into, I will tell you, the enterprise fund. They created this as an enterprise fund 25 years ago, I believe. Different airports are set up and financed differently by different municipalities. This is an enterprise fund. All the money that's generated on this field, all the revenues, goes into that fund. The city can only spend that money on the airport. They can't use it for anything else. But their perspective was, and please jump in here if you're saying something that you don't agree with, was that there's $500,000 in the enterprise fund. But the enterprise fund, to some degree, is a safety buffer. It says, we would never let you go, and the city council, if we want to spend some money, we want to take some money, if we suggest to the city, we want you to allow us to take $100,000 out of the enterprise fund and put it over into an active working account where you can spend it. They said, the $500,000 is a buffer that if anything bad happened at the airport, financially, whatever, and the enterprise fund went down to nothing, or then you went into the red, and then the city of Beverly had to go into its general fund and pay for whatever. He says, he's used the word 3 times. He's gotten very, very, very bad. So we didn't get into this. So we would not allow you to spend the $500,000. He goes, and basically my recommendations are quite often taken up by the city and the mayor because of my knowledge of, so I can see given, tapping into $100,000, maybe $150,000. And he says there's also still unspent. He said about $100,000. And remember, that was the number that they gave us in 2018. When I came here in March, there was about 100,000. I got it written down as about 80,000. But they're saying there's still an account with money, unspent money in there. For that. But again, we knew that back then. And we sat here and it would be much more than $80,000 to finish that building. So, but if you take the $80,000 to $100,000 with the city's approval of taking an additional $100,000 out of the enterprise fund, that's roughly $200,000. And what could we do with that? One of the things possibly would be that we don't fix. That's probably not enough money to finish the entire building. But maybe we just explore the possibility of fixing the middle section where the municipal inspectors were going to go. That would give us that office suite along with the end office suite. I know that just from looking at the restaurant section enough times, it's in bad shape. Much worse shape than where the middle section is right now. You can do a heck of a lot more in just the middle section. And though that's, you know, and then he also, I will throw out, he made a suggestion to us, which, you know, I was taken aback a little bit, but I know there's difference of opinions, but I'm just, he brought up the fact that we should probably explore the jet fuel tax. And he gave us a document, and I found the document, a 3-page document. I'll pass this out, and I'll actually pass this out as well. And this is all that's on the, here, that kind of tells what it is. It's a 5% tax on per gallon of jet fuel. And you can, even if you just Google it, it comes right up. It's about a 3-page document. It doesn't spell out anything. But one of the most interesting things that he pointed towards us, if you look at this little chart here that has all the cities, and I put Masport on there. And again, this is the budget analyst, and he says, here's 8 communities, pardon me, 8 communities in Massachusetts that have implemented or put this jet fuel tax, they've passed it. And then he made it sound like, you know, we could raise $200,000 annually if we implemented this fuel tax. So I went back and looked at this, and if you look at, you know, there are 8 cities here, you know, Bedford, Boston, and Worcester. Those are all Massport controlled. You know, Boston has 20 million passenger enplanements annually. City of Worcester at the bottom has 72,000 passenger enplanements annually, and this is even old data. And Bedford has 10,000 passenger enplanements. Again, those are all commercial aircraft, commercial, you know, businesses. As far as how Massport charges the airlines, Delta, American, whoever, for the fuel, may not be the model that we use here in Beverly. If you look at the next 3 cities, I didn't understand this at all. Concord, Lexington, and Lincoln evidently have passed this jet fuel tax, but they don't have an airport.
They do.
Under what?
Hanscom is in those towns, but I'm guessing the excise tax is tied to the location of the pump.
Okay.
And that Lexington has land area on the field, but.
So
not
again, they're really
necessarily-
part of Bedford, the Hanscom field.
Right.
They're one of the same.
I mean, it'd be like maybe
Bedford.
like Wenham adopting this, and it's like, well, you can't collect anything because there's
Right.
actually no fueling happening in Wenham.
Well, that even clarifies
I'm
it
just
even
taking
more.
a guess as to trying to piece this.
Yeah, I
I
couldn't,
don't think they'd have fuel farms in all 3 of the
no.
little
Right.
towns.
So what I assume they're getting a
It's not in
slice.
Lexington, but it could be in Bedford.
Well, they probably get a slice though, they won't.
Yeah.
I don't know
Property
if-
falls on.
Could be.
But is that, yeah, we just have to learn more.
But then that only leaves 2 airports that are not Massport touched. You got Marshfield with its 1 runway, 3,900 feet. I don't know what kind of jet fuel flowage they have. And then Norwood, a little bit larger. So anyway, he made it sound like if you want to do stuff at the airport, and you want to fix that building up, maybe you should raise your taxes on, from my perspective, the largest business operator we have in the field, which, from my perspective, initially would be a little premature before we start messing. This is only my personal opinion, unstudied, unknowledgeable, but I would like to look at other ways to try to see what we can do to raise money other than impacting business that operate on this field. Now, maybe it turns out that months down the road, after we do an in-depth analysis and get feedback from many different sources, that this is something we should look at. But it would have to take that kind of analysis to make that kind of decision. But just put that aside, that was pretty much how the meeting went. That was my kind of recap. It was, You know, the city doesn't really want to spend any additional money on that building, the one we were gonna tear down 10 years ago. They don't want to spend any money on it. They said there is money still available. You can tap into like $200,000 worth. And again, you should raise your own money, possibly, and take a look at this fuel tax. And then the last thing was, and we'll discuss a lease, which, like I said, I'm going to make a motion that we go into executive session and talk about leases. But he also suggested that the airport road property be, given to the city, in lieu of payments for everything that they do from a budget perspective, for the city of the airport. And let DPS stay back there. I'll roll into the next, I'm just gonna let you guys, what else did you take anything else from that? It was a 2.5-hour conversation, so there was a lot. There was really a lot.
I appreciate that you're saying we should study, because your opinions are very valuable on taxes. I think there's so many different things to consider. But it really seems like it's one of those things that we really have to study it, because generating revenue is gonna, who wants to tax somebody unnecessarily?
Right.
So yeah, I think a lot of this will come down to studying the data, same with the, the airport road up there. But yeah, the meeting kind of went as you said. Jerry kind of explained it. It's kind of like your kid complaining they're not getting their allowance. And the parent's like, well, it's actually my house, and the kids, that's kind of what I heard Jerry say is, the airport is the city's, and it's not like Cahill's or the city, it's the city's airport. And yes, they kind of made a mistake, and, it's clearly there's some debate as to what happened, and, it's very interesting to learn. You've been great. You've been very instrumental in teaching us and digging up all the stuff. It's been phenomenal. But he was trying to explain a different perspective, which I think is kind of hard for us to kind of just...
I will say, it was very much, for the rest of the commissioners, very much an education that I didn't want to have. But again, I will say that was one person's perspective on control of the airport, the governance of the airport, some education about the enterprise fund, who can authorize, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and to that point too, I think one of the things I walked away with, even though I didn't have the advantage of being there for the whole 2 hours, Jerry was suggesting also what can facilitate advancement is having a plan. Is the airport, if we have something at the airport writ large once, that can be brought before the mayor's office and advocated, with the necessary supporting documentation, which
Right.
and
A real business plan,
yeah,
which we've never really put together. Like I said, even from the CIP and the master plan, there's never been any kind of that I've been exposed to in my 7 years.
yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things I was excited about, to think about jumping into, again, bringing on stakeholders, the community, to the businesses, to everyone who uses the airport, is affected by the airport, to kind of have if you will, pardon the expression, vision for the airport, or an idea of what we want it to look like, more than just, infrastructure, which is part of it, of course, but also, other opportunities for revenue, like we talked about, my favorite, a restaurant, having a restaurant here, something we're flying into or visiting from the community. Other aspects like how can we utilize some of the buildings in other ways? What do we want to do here? What do we want the airport to be like, look like, and for the next for the next generation, for the next 5 years, what do we want? So coming forward with something like that, and finding a way to maybe once we get get the airport manager here, we'll have more concrete discussions of what that would look like.
And I after having some time to process my schooling, I started getting philosophical on what is the role of this commission, which has always been a topic of interest to many people. Part of it, and I'm just my takeaway after listening to Mr. Perry, and then again my reaction to the tax. on our, as I see it, our number one, I get way ahead of the game here, but to some degree, the airport has operated for, we'll say since 1950. I can't vouch for what was going on here before the Army or the Navy came in and built this long runway. But the airport has been here for 70 years. And businesses have come and go. We've had, at one point, there were 4 flight schools at one time, big or small. Also, 4 fixed base operators, they mom and pop shop size, I don't, now there's one. It's kind of monopoly-esque to some degree. And the planes keep coming and going. And part of my thinking is, and open for interpretation, always, that I wouldn't want to see us do something that would fundamentally change the business climate of the airport in hopes of pursuing a vision that may not necessarily be needed. Again, we're all open to identifying what we want to do or what can we do without doing harm. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not like if we need a whole bunch more buildings back there and we're going to make certain people pay for them, kind of thing. And then, I always prided myself in my career trying to anticipate the unanticipated consequences. I've seen, if you're going to rush down a road, you better make sure you know what's on both sides of the road or what's behind you. You need to anticipate implementing something. I'm not saying that this isn't a proper course for Beverly Airport, but it would have to be thoroughly and completely vetted, researched, and so.
Could I,
Go ahead.
I would worry about that because that's going to be affecting the businesses that are here. But the transient traffic, which we're probably getting some revenue from the fuel off of, is going to decrease because they can shop around just like you can in your own cars. So why would they necessarily come here? I mean, I'd rather see something like food trucks in the parking lot that would attract some pilots coming in on the weekends.
Right.
So they'll buy more fuel rather than
well,
increase
would
the
it be
tax.
interesting to know that we have the cheapest fuel around anywhere in these airports? and we
Orange
have
is
to have
close.
the tax?
Orange,
What's that?
Orange is one of the cheapest places. to
Okay,
go.
so I did like a cursory on whatever the flight map is and pulled up fuel. So even if we added the 5% tax and put this in tax at the other airports, we'd still be the cheapest fuel out. But that was like a 5-minute quick analysis. Obviously, this is a deep analysis. If we just put it out there, it would be irresponsible of us to not consider.
Right. And again, it was fascinating when we sat here last month and the gentleman who came up, and I don't think he's here tonight, who handled the charters, or the corporate jet traffic. I don't know what his business really was, but he talked about how expensive it was, and they try to tanker in. They try to fill up elsewhere before they fly into here because of the cost. So you got, one business, someone saying this, and the data saying something else. Well, there's clearly, variables into both of what that person's saying and what the data that's available. They're untold. What are the landing fees? What are this and what are that? What's the proximity to other, options for them? Those are the kind of things we would have to have a complete and, detailed understanding of before we would ever take a vote on something like that. I challenge us to do just that, to find out truly what the situation is. And when you bring the FBO into it, get their perspective, get the other, how many other businesses are like this, Joe? I've never heard of them before. How many of those are on the field? And we should get their perspective. And then, reaching out to so many other airports to make sure that we got a full picture of what this is, besides the 2.5 pages that,
Can I back up? Jerry, one of the things Jerry said was that the way the city works is that the mayor comes up with the stuff, he sends it to city council, it goes in that direction, and the city council approves this stuff, and Jerry is the guy that basically blesses and approves projects in the budget throughout the city. Like, he would either say, hey, I think therefore we should do this, or this is too much, right? So he essentially said, he's had such an understanding, he's had so much experience in 20-something years in Massachusetts that I kind of felt like he knew what he was saying. And his message was, I'm really the guy that's gonna rubber stamp you yes or no, based on what I tell the city council. And so he was just suggesting, as a matter of business to let some stuff go on how to look at it, which I thought was interesting. But I'm curious, because his experience, what was he telling us?
Right.
In that?
And and I take that into consideration as well. I mean, it's almost like when you listen to your political leaders, you know, and they say, well, this program's gonna be great for this, or this, you know, tax cut's gonna be great for this, and, you know, they make all these promises, and it's a wide sweeping thing, and nobody, like, you know, 2,000-page bill, and nobody knows what the real ramifications are of it 20 years down the road, you know, and meanwhile, all your small shops are all closed, you know. So you need to be careful, and, you know, you witness it all the time, just
Well,
people
that's a great perspective.
jumping.
I agree, yeah.
And he gave us just this one idea. Well, he did say, you know, there's some money available, you can tap into that kind of thing. I would support that. But I'd like to say, well, what's your option number 2 and 3? Because I don't know, I'm scared of number 1.
And it's important with a plan.
And a plan.
That's what I want to keep going back to. I can't underscore that enough.
And just to let you know, I tracked down the mayor of Beverly on the streets of City Hall and you know, forced the issue to have a meeting. And he said, yes, we're gonna have a meeting, but I haven't heard when. He promised to have the meeting, I think, did I bring that up? Yeah, I think it was the day before we had that meeting, and he'd also met the mayor that night. And he suggested that we have some kind of a business plan. Well, you know, you don't create one of those overnight, but it's a conversation that we need to have with ourselves, and then try to find out, you know, what our options might be. Clearly, tapping into the $80,000 that are left, plus the 100 that they would possibly allow us to spend out of the enterprise fund, to put that towards the renovation of the middle section at least, might be one option to do something with that building. Because if we don't, it's gonna sit here like McDonald's down on the waterfront for 25 years. It's already sat there for 7 years. Another 7 are gonna go by just like that, and another 7 go like that. So either, you know, we're a week away from tearing the dang thing down. And they talked us into not to. And again, I will tell you that what was interesting, the perspective was, well, the money that is generated on this field is generated within the city limits of Beverly. And that money goes into the Beverly Bank, and they can't spend it anywhere else but here. But, you know, don't think you've got access to everything you think you do. And again, that was just his perspective, and it was interesting. And we're still on I'm ready to roll on because we've got some things to do. I will tell you also,
Paul, can I just
go ahead.
ask a question? On high level, do you know, or has maybe Steve, you might know, has anybody from the city side talked about fiscal budget, fiscal year '24? Do we have any indications of when the city starts putting budget together?
April is the time frame.
Okay.
And last year, we were in the same boat we are right now. The city basically just replicated the budget from the previous year. I assume they're gonna do the exact same thing, for moving, you know. I think
Did did they ask any input, you and Nikki?
No, they haven't approached me anything on the budgetary needs at the airport.
Right. I mean, I know for, and again, I saw in those previous minutes that there was always a scheduled meeting between the airport manager, ASG, and whoever was on the budget committee, or whatever, and they would meet and just kind of talk about, you know, facilitate that brainstorming. What do we want to add? Do we want to get a part-timer, which we do have, there's another part-timer. In my 5, 6, 7 years, I was kind of shocked that they let us hire somebody. But again, it's the whole idea of them letting us hire based upon, you know, the fiscal soundness of the airport. But again, we hit our low in operations only in 2014, 2015. Javier just started up in 2015. You know, the whole thing, like I said in that presentation, is rebounding significantly. So the finances is in a better situation than obviously, you know, in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17 kind of thing. But again, I think at some point we should probably ask the city to come forward and give us a presentation or else we go there and have a presentation. It so rarely happens, and I would love to hear from somebody in the cities, because they only tell you what they want to tell you. That's my personal opinion. You know, so like I said, it was an education, just hearing Jerry touch upon some.
And he was very clear, he wasn't the city, he was not representing the city, which was even more interesting because he was representing city council and how they approve things, so.
Yeah, but the working relationship between
No, yeah.
him and the administration was pretty tight. in
But he
my
did talk
opinion.
and say, I am separate, I don't represent the city and the government, which I thought was helpful, and, you know, where that
Yes.
lands down the road with these things.
Yes, it was nice, it was refreshing, but semi-problematic from my perspective.
The 80K, how do we get that?
Well, again, it's in an, if I understand it, it's in an account ready to be spent.
Yeah, but that's.
It's just
Just to write
city,
an RFP, a
that's-
proposal, a business plan to.
I think I know how that works.
Yeah, we do have
Then we
a,
should get off our butts and do that. If
I don't
that's,
think,
if
that's
the
probably
case.
not our funds. What it sounds to me is like if DPS had some sort of authorization to spend cash, and
Right,
that
right.
cash is
Just-
still
just-
sitting.
it was
there.
part of that.
He thinks
It's
we
not
could do that.
our, yeah, it's not our money, that is Mayor
He's essentially
Cash's
saying that
money.
$100,000 kind of is ours. He said, if we write a
Well,
proposal.
it's earmarked for the airport
We have to-
only.
They're not just gonna give it to us.
It hasn't been spent.
It sounds like a trust, it probably has some kind of stipulations.
Well, again, if you remember, in my long presentation, which I'm sure you watched many times like me.
Why
You know,
don't we just put
the
you on
city-
the ag commission?
I don't know.
and
The
ask?
city basically went to the city council and they said, first of all, we want to take $300,000 of city money and put it towards building 45. And the city council said, yes, okay, so there's $300,000. They also turned to us and said, we want the airport to make a contribution. And we actually made $167,000, $30,000 went for additional things beyond the construction cost of this building, and $117,000 went towards that. And it all went into an account. What upsets me, and I do have, and we've had it for a long time right here, here's the runoff of all the expenses that DPS spent. I mean, it's Auschbahn, Moynihan Lumber and Dawson Hardware, it's line items. But what I can't see, and I'm gonna probably come back out here, because Kim Croft printed this, it's hard to delineate which ones went towards building 45 and what they're calling building 43. One of my complaints has always been that, because they told the appraiser in 15, the city's gonna spend, and this was DPS, about $300,000 on 45 and only $55,000 to fix up the DPS property back there. I think they way overspent on fixing up DPS back there. And they fixed that up first, along with where the police detectives went into. And when they came back and said, ooh, there's only $80,000 left, sorry about that, we're not gonna be able to finish 45. That's part of what I believe happened. They overspent back there. They didn't spend 55, they probably spent 155, maybe 255,000 on what? I don't know, it's a cinder block building from 1957, but don't get me going. Anyway, so that's one thing, and we are gonna go into executive session, we'll get this rolling, to talk about the lease, because we don't wanna pass that up. I will tell you, I'm moving on, I did talk about Anderson Krieger and the leases. I brought it up on that deal, we were gonna have Anderson Krieger. We have a relationship with Anderson Krieger right now. They're handling with our interest, the PFAS, the drilling, the whole process, which has been going on for a year and a half. I had a phone conversation with an attorney up there, just talking about, we think this is appropriate, and I appreciate your input. The city is involved, you got the solicitor's office as well as DPS interjecting as far as what is the end process of that drilling or whatever. What they're looking for is an additional $25,000. Nobody at the city has a problem with that. It's basically to hopefully finish up their portion of the work. But we do have an ongoing relationship with Anderson Krieger downtown, which, the city is fully aware of. And that, again, I think I shared with you, Gloria spent $10,000 just trying to get assistance with the leases because the city was going back and forth and fighting for, 3 airport managers and $10,000, and we still don't have leases. Anyway, And I will tell you, on March 9th, after having the conversations with Jerry, I had an hour-long Zoom call with the director of the FAA and George Pantelli, the specialist for compliance. And we talked about 45. I sent them the link to my presentation. Anyway, well, we talked about 45 and we talked about the property back there. And their perspective was in quite a bit of contrast to what Jerry had, at least his attitude towards it. And they're like, I will say, we'll get into the whole lease thing, but they said, the city ought to be paying you $4,000 a month for that airport road. No matter if, and again, what I came out here and searched for two and a half days was there was a reference that, we all know about the proposal for 45, which the FAA saw and approved. So where was the equal, proposal for DPS? And George Pantelli sent it to me. I looked in every filing cabinet, couldn't find it. And it was a one letter, I don't know, did I share it with you guys? I think I did. And it basically says, we're gonna let them have Airport Road in lieu of payments for everything the city does for us, basically, for services, rendered. And we brought up that Jerry said, yeah, that's an acceptable thing. Even the FAA said, it is acceptable, but the city is kind of taking advantage of it. The FAA says if they're gonna impose that kind of relationship, then annually, the city needs to line by line item, what is the airport being charged for, at what rate, and what are the services. They can't just, we want that because we did an RFP for you 4 years ago. That's basically the essence of it. But Jerry said that the city does budget $100,000 a year for everything from the employee benefit packages, to the medical, and a bunch of other things. But that needs to be identified and clarified to a degree that does not exist. And even if they said, here's $100,000, it still ought to be, well, first of all, the airport says, give us our $48,000 a year, and then you can charge us $100,000. You can't just not pay us and charge us $100,000 and use that as a hammer to not give us what we need. So it was an interesting mix of perspectives between the FAA. And then you also saw my note that, we're gonna go to that meeting, wherever it's gonna be, and then try to, re-educate the city on what the FAA thinks. And again, I'm hoping we're gonna get that letter. But we aren't gonna get it before like the 23rd, because George Pantelli is gone for a weekend. He's gonna need 2 or 3 days to put that thing together. But it will be very supportive of our position and clarify what the FAA's position is. But that's what I'm looking for, get that first. So it was a very interesting hour-long conversation with the FAA. And again, most of these battles, they say it's up to us to fight. They're not equipped or in the desire to fight them for us. And that is in the essence of the chairman's report. Any questions, topics? Okay. Airport manager report.
Yes.
I'm just gonna ask if you can be as brief as
I'll be
possible,
brief.
because we are gonna have an executive session.
Very
Please, I'm gonna make a motion for one.
Very, very good, right. Briefly, on the front burner, of course, is the impending nor'easter or snowstorm, which the media has hyped up. But in checking with Dave and Dave, they've assured me that the snow removal equipment has been well oiled. The plows are set and ready to go. They're watching the forecast, and they'll be on the horn with the snow team if the snow does arrive. So they're well aware, they're set and ready to roll. The equipment's all functional, and no TAMs will be issued as appropriate, and fuel cleared and made available for any traffic that might be flying in or out of the field. So that's one of the things in checking at the readiness. As you touched upon briefly, is the PFAS addendum, which is, I had to look that up, the polyfluoroalkyl substances, or basically like Teflon or firefighting foam, for addendum for additional service, identifying and characterizing how to taxiway Foxtrot. It has been approved. I think you may have signed it. It's going to the mayor's signature, and then they'll continue services and continue billing us. for
Are you
ongoing
sure I
work
signed
there. It may, well, I'll check with Nikki, I think.
Because I don't remember
Okay.
seeing it yet.
All right, so we'll look into that then tomorrow,
Okay.
or this week, we'll look into it to get your signature on that, and then forward it to City Hall, then forward it back to GZA, that they can continue to service it out there as required. Along with mentioning Nikki, we're working on updating the based aircraft list, which is a requirement for the FAA as well as Mass DOT, and she's working on that based aircraft list, so that's reaching out to all our tenants, our leaseholders that have aircrafts in hangars, as well as our base aircraft owners and tie-down owners, and we update that report yearly. Additionally, I'll be checking with Nikki on the SAMS report, which is the System for Awards Management, so we can receive federal funding, which has to be updated annually, so we're working on correcting that, and making sure that that is in place. Additionally, this last month, I worked with the Mass DOT Aeronautical Inspector, Drew Mahaley, in the field inspection, and he updates the 5010, that's the Airport Master's Record, which then translates into data that is imported into the Airport Facilities Directory, or as now they contact the chart supplement. And from there, that would kind of briefly wrap it up right there, just ongoing reports and everything at the airport.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate
Yes.
it, Rich. Go ahead.
Yes.
The aircraft list, is that, what was the real name for that?
They call it based aircraft list, surprisingly, yeah,
Based
based aircraft list, yes. There is a portal online where you can actually go on there and update that, delete or add aircraft that are at the airport.
And that's an annual,
Yes, yes.
and that's to the FAA?
That does, the FAA looks at that as well as MassDOT. So additionally, we try to make that coincide with what we report to MassDOT, because they're looking at aircraft registration, so aircraft that are based 90 days more, or 60, I'd have to look it up again, it's either 60 or 90 days consecutively, or a registration fee to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And presently, right now, they're in their annual renewal, that March 1st is now a $25 penalty to whatever registration fee is due. But they sift that out, look and see what they have for aircraft that are registered versus what's on the based aircraft list.
Understanding that, I'm not asking for who's what,
Yes.
but is that something that the commission could receive a copy of once finalized? Just whatever that report looks like, I mean, I'm not, it's
I
just
would check, I don't see.
35
this- yeah.
fees, 25 of those.
Right.
Just an
why-
understanding of what's on the field, I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard the number vaguely over time, and I've seen some sources online, but, just to know what we officially say it is.
I don't see there's any problem with that, I'll look into it, but yeah.
It is interesting because I pulled up a bunch of screenshots, and I think it was on the master plan, but it also might have been somewhere else. And it had like 5 airports, and it had about 15 categories, and they compared all of them, all of our size, and it showed the number of
Single engine piston.
yeah, and how many, jets are,
Yeah, no, it'd just be nice to
Yeah.
see.
It was interesting to see it in black and white as far as who's actually on the field.
Yeah.
What kind of aircraft do we have?
Right.
Versus,
I mean, obviously, we have a sense, but
Right.
anything official
So that
would be helpful. Thank
Any
you.
other comment? Yes.
Does SAM system change their numbering this year? A lot of organizations have been having trouble
On
getting
the
registered
SAM,
for the jets.
I know that Nikki hasn't completed it, and we've got a couple reminders for us to complete it. So it could be that could be the case too.
The deadline is April 14th.
14th, right.
I woke up this morning, I got an email, the deadline, and I read March 14th. Tomorrow? What?
So,
I started leaving messages at City
But
Hall.
some of the departments are having months to get updated, so.
okay, so I'll alert Nikki to that, and she's, I'm sure, works with City Hall, Brian Ailes and Catherine Barrett and everything down at City Hall.
Well, and I saw an email, and I
Yes.
think I forwarded it, I mean, there seems to be like some question as to who actually does the keystroke entry. I mean, what is the process to update that registration? Does Catherine do it, or?
I believe Nichelle does it.
Okay.
Nichelle does it here.
Well, between those three
Open
things,
that
the
portal to the
Galaxy,
airport.
the Galaxy invoices,
Yes.
which are, again, 4 year round, they have to be approved by city council,
Yes.
because, and then the GZA
GZA for
amendment,
PFAS addendum, correct.
which I may or may not have signed, the mayor has to sign off on it.
Yes,
And then the same registration. Those three,
right.
if you keep an eye on those three.
And basic aircraft, absolutely, yes, and I'll look into see if we can't get some type of report that the commission can share.
Yeah, you don't have to kill yourself on the based aircraft list, just whatever you hit
Mhm.
to Mass Aeronautics, just make me a copy or share a copy, something that doesn't have to be anything
Sure.
special.
Yeah, well, thank you for that insight, that it's been a little bit cumbersome, and hopefully we don't experience that, hopefully we're smooth sailing. Thank you.
With that, as far as new business, I think everybody saw, the executive session that we had on the 28th, the minutes. Instead of finding a time to get all of you on a Zoom call just to pass the minutes of that meeting, one of the things that the city has asked instead is delegating to the chair the authority to approve the executive minutes. And I just go down there myself and just sign off on it. So at this point, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the commission approves it to delegate to the vice chair and referee the authority to approve the executive session minutes dated February 28th, 2023.
If you're making the motion, I'll second it, but I was gonna volunteer to make that motion for you, but.
Well, I don't know, point of order.
Yeah.
I yield to our expert back here.
Chairs don't usually make motions.
Okay, well,
That's fine.
we're gonna go with parliamentarian procedure, and it's okay tonight.
I'll make the motion. I will move.
So
that-
moved?
Right.
Okay, so, and seconded by Commissioner Doxey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? Passed unanimous. Okay, very good. I'll run down and take care of that. Old business, is you threw it under there. Again, you can see it in black and white, you can take it home with you. As far as the subcommittees that used to be, there used to be a property, legal, and finance. There were 3 commissioners on that. Noise abatement, I think there were 3 on that as well. Facility maintenance, that was just Fuzzy Faustic because he was a maintenance construction expert. Website management, I will tell you, there was a gentleman here, Ralph Fagone, somebody. Yes, he was our website management person. He interfaced with whoever was doing that, and he would always give us a little update on how many people were clicking onto our website. I don't know if that information is really vital or of interest, but that's, in public relations, we used to have, and I think it was Karen, what was her name? Nelson?
Yes.
Karen Nelson, wow, because I just saw her name a week ago. As public relations, she worked for the city of Danvers in that office of communications of some kind, or what, is she still there?
No.
Okay,
No.
but anyway, so that's, I don't know how much use a, public relations, of course, let me step back, in today's situation, I think it might be something useful. And safety and security, safety events and security fence kind of thing. I mean, as we lost commissioners, and so many of these, were 1 or 2 people and they really didn't have anything to report, they just kind of just went away.
You had 11. There was 11.
Well,
at
actually,
one point, right?
yes,
It was.
it was, but then they voted to go to 9. Well, I think it was like 3 months after I came on. I don't know, I think it was before you came here. But they actually passed the motion to go from 11 commissioners down to 9. I think I copied you in on the note that I sent to the mayor, said, if you can't fill the commission, maybe we should only have 7. It doesn't make sense to have 9 seats authorized and holding us to a quorum being 5 when you never give us 9. And they quickly started, throwing names and, but. So I think we can discuss this next week as well. but I don't know if they're all needed, but I think what I'm just leaning
Next
towards.
week, next month?
Month, I'm sorry. But, you know, I think that there's a.
Looking forward to it.
Yes, well, just keep watching your emails, there might be a meeting next week, okay? So, I think there needs to be some additional structure to the commission again. There's enough going on, as just talked across this table. It might make sense, we do have the noise abatement subcommittee.
I was gonna say, I know you're not necessarily looking for an update
Well,
per se,
I'll
but,
take one.
okay, can I put that as number 2 or to number the first comment?
Sure.
I think, I agree with you, I think we should look at these, maybe we don't need all of them these days, but there's probably 2 or 3 on here that are worth thinking about reawakening. And I'll just say in a weird way, the noise abatement / public relations subcommittee, I feel like there might be a lot of overlap in some of those, so again, I don't know if we need to have a
Yes.
separate
This
thing.
was not a well-crafted list.
Yeah, no,
It was
I
just-
get- yeah,
it was
no.
way too
And
thin.
this
We
is
never
all-
use them, that's
no.
why we just kind of.
No, I get where the exercise, I think
Right.
some of these maybe we can think about what really is going on and trim this down, but I do think that that's a good comment that we should consider kind of how we attack the work that we have to do. As far as noise abatement, would you, or
Please.
we have not met in probably 3 weeks. There was some vacation time,
School vacations.
we have a draft document that the 3 commissioners on the subcommittee felt was comfortable. I think we last met, late February. Obviously with Jeff's resignation today, we now are down a subcommittee member, but maybe Josh and I will talk about scheduling a meeting so that we can try and pick up the pieces. But basically where we left it was we were just at a point of having a document and a report that kind of goes alongside of it to explain what we're, how we got to where we got. We were about to hit the field to get some outreach. I reached out to some of the Danvers residents to get their feedback on it. We have to schedule those meetings, so we've been kind of in a holding pattern for the last 10 days. We were trying to get some information out of staff here to assist with some of that outreach. That kind of seemed to die on the vine, and then we got the news today that Jeff is resigning. So I think is that about where we're at?
Jeff wrote 2 emails on February 23rd that essentially said, I'm working on a distribution list. Talking to Nikki, a little confusion, then he wrote again the next day or the same day saying, I'm still having a challenge with this. And we were waiting on that, so there was actually, we thought the document was ready to go out. Then was gonna contact us, I think he was busy, vacation, stuff like that, so we were giving him some space, I think, and then hoping today, and then he resigned, so. Last we heard, it was about to go out to whoever
He was gonna do the distribution.
He was gonna do distribution to stakeholders in the airport.
Okay.
So we were waiting to hear on that, and he never quite went full circle.
Well, I'm sure he'll share with you whatever he had, whatever.
Yeah, I think I think Jeff was looking for the tenant list, just as a simple way to find the people on the field quickly and let them know, and we got a little roadblock there, I'm not sure if.
Well, we have
have.
a tenant phone list, which I saw next to the copier.
Yes.
Wouldn't we just wanna go like and talk to the flight schools in the tower about just getting them a copy of it, just so.
Yeah, no, I think,
Oh, yeah,
and
leave
so I
that.
think when
That
we have a chance to connect, I think. we
Well,
should
I'd like to
talk
make
about-
a suggestion,
Yeah.
if it's not presumptuous or early, but since you lost the pilot and we've gained a skilled pilot, is this anything, we can discuss this offline.
Yeah.
But again, it's the pilot perspective, because the noise abatement program is really a pilot-centric usage document more than anything else. It's just maybe it's just another set of eyes just to look at it. and it's
And
like-
if she doesn't, if you don't want to, as long as we get your eyes on it, it'd be great to somehow loop you in without.
Just
all
to read it.
concerns, just
Yeah,
to
well,
read
I
it.
think that's fine,
Yeah.
and
it's
so I think Jeff was gonna do some outreach and bring back whatever he found. I was gonna offer the same to the Danvers residents, and then presumably we'd have a consensus document at that point, and we'd bring it back to the full commission
Right.
for something. I would say we probably fell, with this, I'm assuming we're another month behind. just give.
But you've got those steps laid out in front of you, you know where you wanna
I
go.
think so, but again,
Well,
we
it's
were
just
kinda
one
giving Jeff
document.
that,
It's
yeah.
a simple document that was just, edited and reorganized, and so now we want to put it out for comment.
I mean, again, I'll just throw my own 2 cents in, I think the feedback from those parties you were talking about is crucial.
Oh, yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
think-
I think we were just giving Jeff the space he had said he was gonna take care of
Sure.
that one.
He sounded very busy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
So we'll redouble, back on that, but again, I think our preliminary work is done, and now we need the feedback.
should we
Okay.
try to agree to, what can we do formally tonight to decide within the week to get it out? We can
Just-
communicate minimally.
Yeah, we'll connect after, and just single
Just so we can get it out
yeah,
to-
yeah, we'll connect after, but we'll make sure that there's a more substantive update next month,
Okay.
so.
We put something, while you're saying that, can we actually try to send it out to?
Yeah.
people?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
far,
no, yeah, so that we'll have feedback to report,
Okay,
I
great,
think.
wonderful.
Okay, just to close the door on the subcommittee, I mean, we'll, take a look at it, I guess. And if there's something on here you think that makes more sense, I mean, this is 5 years old, and it might be 15 years old. We can clearly come up with a cleaner, smaller, what we actually touch upon. I mean, your work on the noise abatement subcommittee is, we haven't had something like that, other than the hiring process that we go through every 2 years around here, so.
And I'm happy to look at whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely want it, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and that's it for old business. Anybody have anything to add before we move on? Okay. We put on the agenda tenant comments, public comments, and commission comments. Again, reflecting days of old. I like having the public and the tenant comments on there. Before we move forward, I will tell you that I think some of you that were here last month, and even previous months, after watching enough of the other boards that represent the city of Beverly and Danvers, I don't get your sister, we have a long way to go in improving just the interaction of the commission with the public. Things happen at this meeting which I'm not happy about, and we as a commission can do better. I know in the past, some commissioners have been passionate. And I know that while in September, we had a 2.5-hour basic public hearing, and it was emotional, it was heartfelt, and I think the commission was accommodating to a fault, and that is, I take full responsibility as the chair, but I feel it's important to hear everybody's opinions as much as possible. But we need to have a level of decorum in this meetings that we're all going to be proud of, and that we all can tolerate as well. I will tell you that I reached out to the city solicitor's office asking for some guidelines on how these meetings with passionate people at this table and in the audience can interact, and what's an appropriate way to do it. I got some guidelines. One of them also, the suggestions were, well, maybe you have a public hearing quarterly, and an hour can go on. I know the idea, of having public comments every single meeting where, and we haven't stopped anybody from coming. I think last time 5 or 6 people came up, but if you look at City Council of Beverly, they allow 3 public comments each meeting. You sign up in advance, you call in, or we just select right here. Everyone gets 3 minutes. So there's some control of, just making sure that we don't have 15 people trying to talk to us every week or every month, which is beyond, I think, what the public comment section of a public body is expected to undertake. I will also say that the city clerk gave me copies of the city council's rules of order for the city council. I'm just gonna read this. The citizen schedule to comment to the city council under this rule shall be deemed out of order and may have their comment period terminated by the presiding officer, the chair, for any of the following. I'm just gonna read these. A, the use of vulgar, profane, or disrespectful language. B, personal attacks on any person. C, political speeches towards political candidates. D, directing comments to any person other than the presiding officer of the meeting. Then it goes on, shows the justification for that. And those are the examples that I looked at the city council as far as what we should be enforcing amongst ourselves as commissioners and from the public that comes to these meetings. And I will even go a step further. I went to this Beverly Police Department and had a conversation with them. I said, if we get into a situation where the public is not responding to either the gavel or request to take a seat, or if it hasn't come to this point yet, but as a commission, I'm just saying we need to understand what our responsibilities are in maintaining order. And if somebody will not cease and is instructed to leave the meeting, then the police said you should call 911 and we'll dispatch a police officer. It hasn't come to that. But I will tell you, in the last 6 months, there have been a couple of times, in retrospect, I did not fulfill my duties as the chair of a public body. And that's basically, we're going to, over the coming months, take a look at putting some of the city council's words into our own language. And I just want to make sure, we do not want to curtail comments. But there has to be a limit, there has to be control. There also has to be, on a regular basis, I do one suggestion from the city solicitor's office, why don't you have, tenant comments 1 month and have public comments the next month, or have schedule a public hearing on a regular basis to let whoever wants to come in and talk at length, 3-4 minutes at a time. Go ahead.
And part of my thinking of the noise abatement / whatever, that, along your lines, I was going to at some point probably volunteer to do a quarterly, given that a lot of the complaints side are coming from Danvers, that I can take a lot of the, the head off of it maybe, or at least try it. And there's documents, as we've done our research, there's been hints of this group happening in the past, and it just seems like the commission is, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. But I think there's some value if we were to do some sort of like quarterly, session to allow people to bring anything to the table. It doesn't have to be a full commission meeting, but just something that they can come and be heard, and someone from the commission is there.
Right.
And
Well, and we're mixing a little bit of apples and oranges as far as like the noise abatement subcommittee. I think and what was your former colleague's?
Matt Mosier.
Matt was heavily involved, again, along with the chair, Scott DeLay. I think they were having monthly, which became overwhelming. And in 30 days, you couldn't show any change or improvement. It was too much.
And I think that had to do with the master plan as well, whereas I think this, I'm viewing it more as just something the community can just,
Well, I applaud that, and then trying to figure out what that would look like, how often it would look, and who and when and where. But again, I do want to a fault, I try to be as accommodating as possible to the public, and to hear all passions as much as possible. There are a couple of times, when individuals will come and they turn and start presenting to the audience instead of to the president or the chair of the council or the commission. Something like that. It's just, so anyway, we've got work to do. We're gonna try to be as fair as possible. I see your finger up, but we're gonna roll into, you're a tenant, and we're gonna have tenant comments next, okay? So, just bear with me, I appreciate that. One of the things is, we don't have the FBO here tonight. And we have a couple representatives from the flight school, as well as the air patrol, or no, not, I'm sorry, the Aero Club. I do like the idea of having something from the tenants, because we need to hear more from the tenants as much as, we hear from so many other entities. But with all of the things, does anybody want to add anything to what I just stated from, at least from the commission? Okay, we do have work to do, whether it be in the subcommittees, and also what kind of protocols we want to put in place for conducting these meetings in an orderly fashion. I'm going to move on to tenant comments. If you want to come up and just address the, very good. And we do have a couple of people here. Very
Hi,
good.
I'm Bill Cosmo, I think almost all of you.
What city are you a resident of?
I'm sorry, what?
What city are you a resident of?
Danvers.
Okay.
Got two quick comments here. You were talking about, you've spoken with the police. We did have a situation like that back in the days. Back in the 2009, 2010 timeframe, we had a Beverly police lieutenant who was present at every monthly meeting for about a year and a half. Things got out of hand, so this is not a new turf, so I just want to mention that. The other thing is, earlier in the meeting, you were talking about putting tax on fuel. I think it's a good idea. I just did a quick look on the internet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but you can look at fuel prices. So I just quickly looked at here, Norwood, Hanscom, and Boston. Beverly and Norwood are on a par. Prices are really close, okay? But I hate to say it, I'm kind of prejudiced against people who use jet fuel because they cause a lot of controversy. Our jet fuel prices are really low, extremely low. We're using round numbers, we're about $7 a gallon. Hanscom is around $10 a gallon, Boston is $10.25 a gallon. And that's not people who are indigenous to this airport, so.
Well, and I appreciate that, and it's gonna be part of our analysis. We're gonna have to take a serious look, but I appreciate your comment.
If I can-
Anyway.
I'll add just a question, and this is gonna sound really dumb, but I'm good at that. We don't set the gas price, right? I mean, there's a provider on the field who's setting the rate.
For the tax
Right.
increase.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying that.
I don't
we
know, I have no idea how
If
that's-
we're 7
that's
and
set.
they're 10, we
Gas
got
station, I
nothing to
assume.
do with
I don't
the
know.
commission, correct? We don't have any,
To my knowledge, I don't know.
we charge a 10 cent a gallon fee right now as a
Fuel full
commission
fee, correct.
on whatever,
Whether it be hundred low lead or jet, there's
Right.
a fuel full.
but we don't set, just,
Correct,
just-
we do not set the
we do
fee.
not set the price.
The FBO is free to set their own price, so.
Okay.
If
Do
they
you know, is the jet fuel tax specifically for jet fuel, or is it all aviation fuel?
It clearly said jet fuel, and I even tried to find something, I couldn't find, I Googled
I did see
for a
that.
half hour,
Somebody-
couldn't find
You made
it.
it indicate there could be any gallon of gas.
But
so-
we have in our fee structure a 10 cent a gallon surcharge on Jet A and 100 LL,
Okay,
separate from.
thank you.
Okay, just last closing comment. What's brought this to my mind is, I used to fly through Buffalo on occasion, and I noticed, I'd get my fuel slip, there was state tax, county tax, city tax, it was just like 4 or 5 taxes
Right.
stacked up on top of everything. So I don't know what propelled that, how it was structured, the legality of it or not, but why not here?
Right,
Thank you for your time.
we'll look, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any further tenants, comments? Okay, we're gonna transition into public comments. I'll let you come up.
I'm a tenant too. Well, subtenant. Hi, I'm Rachel Abel. I live at 19 Echo Ave here in Beverly. I am the elected Ward 1 representative of the school committee and the chair, but I am speaking on my own behalf as my own self and as a resident who lives less than 2 miles from the approach end of 3-4. And I got to speak here last month, and I thanked a lot of people, including the tower and the FBO and the flight schools. I neglected to thank Air Bear, our on-site maintenance crew, and obviously I don't see anyone here tonight, but I did want to echo some of the conversation that's happened at this table tonight about how important the businesses are to the field. Myself and my partners of our plane that we hang out at the FBO have spent a good amount of money with Air Bear, but we appreciate their rapid service, their eye to attention of detail, making sure that we're all flying safely. And I think it's a real value to have those on-field services. I can't imagine flying into some other airfields where they don't have that service. I would sometimes wish they were able to support their business all week long on Saturdays and Sundays. You know, sometimes you have the disappointing turnaround and put it back in the hangar because they don't currently have that. But anything that this commission can do to support the thriving businesses here at the airport would be greatly appreciated. And then just as a side note, as a chair, and I'm speaking as myself, I think that your comments this evening were right on point, and I look forward to attending future meetings and having an opportunity as a tenant, as a pilot, and as a resident that lives under the approach end to be able to speak. And I think that's a really important monthly activity. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that's gonna wanna come up? Come on up, Ace.
Ace Chase, Cat Aviation. I basically have two items. One is a question, and that is you're talking about extending runway length. And you come up with 5,600 feet. What is with that number? Why can't it be 53, 54, 55? What is the 56 representing? It's talking about 300 feet on each end. And on the Wenham end, you're gonna have a serious problem. If you can go to just 5,300 feet, the cost is gonna be much lower legally because of Wenham. Or you could probably extend another 100 feet there, so you'd have 5,400 feet. But to move this subject along, why wouldn't it be, I mean, what does the 5,600 foot represent? I know it over 5,000 feet, like we go 5,001 because of certain aircrafts, but what would, if we only did 53 instead of 56, your cost would be a lot lower.
Okay.
And why, I mean, why not examine that?
Okay.
My other thing is Building 45. I have been involved in that for years and years and years. For 7 years, I've gotten nothing for it. When it was producing income, it was producing $700 a month. That's for the whole building and the restaurant. Now, why wouldn't you just put in, and this has been done in the past, since it's such a junk building, having somebody who's interested to come in and just say, okay, for 5 years, we don't pay anything for rent. We will completely rehab that building, start it up as a restaurant and everything, but you'd have to negotiate 5 years from now what you would be charging them under certain circumstances. But to get the ball started, there are some people that would come in and pay the big amount and get it set up the way they wanted to. And, all right, so for 7 years, you've got nothing. So for 5 more years, you're getting something, you're getting all the rework of the building, in the use of the building, in the use of a restaurant here. So I just think that was done with Hangar 4, because Hangar 4 was ready to be demolished. And when it was taken over, for the first 3 years, there was no charges. That was how it was negotiated. And then it was negotiated, okay, for the next year, half as much money, and it went up to $2,000 after a couple more years.
Definitely something we need to
It,
address.
it should be.
Right.
It should be, because there are people that would invest in that if they had a good plan. But I'm talking 5 years, of course, 5 years of no charges. You're getting nothing now, and this is a start to get something.
Okay. Well, and we're gonna have a conversation later.
Okay, I'm just saying, that's a suggestion.
No, I appreciate it.
You know, have them fix it up, and, you know, their costs be, you know,
Right.
counted as rent and everything, and then decide what you wanna do after 5 years, that's.
Well,
gonna have to be-
and I appreciate your comment.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's gonna be a suggestion that we're gonna add to the list of possibilities.
Okay,
Okay?
that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have a comment? Mr. Zubrick, you wanna come up and at least?
Oh, I have to make sure the camera's on right.
Smile.
Yeah. I bet you Becky did very good. Oh, that's so I haven't been here for a couple of months.
Just keep in mind, sir, we're trying to keep it, we gave a few extra minutes, but I'm gonna try to hold you to 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing I want to do is congratulate you on your plan for the business plan and the subcommittees. Your subcommittees right now are non-functional. All you do your business is at this meeting. So the noise committee has been working on the outside because you only have 2 commissions. The other committees don't exist. So it's a good thing. So I want to make sure that that's recognized. The one question I had when we were talking about the master plan, and this comes in together with the fuel charges and the taxes that are being collected someplace, because that fuel does not come without federal, state, and excise tax, I believe, that's included in there. That's where Mr. Cossawan was saying that his bill had a lot of different identified costs. We, at one time, and I'm going back to 95, 97, 98, there was a discussion because the fuel depot here at the airport is located in Danvers, on Danvers property. There was supposed to be taxes that are being collected for that fuel, specifically federal and excise tax, and I believe there was some state tax that's included, because you don't get that fuel for free from the dealer. And that was supposed to be handed over or shared with the town of Danvers. So that's another issue, and I appreciate you talking about it, because this is something that's been buried and nobody's talking about it since '97, I believe.
I'm just gonna jump in here. I believe there's an agreement between the 2 cities that in lieu of those taxes being given, the city of Danvers
Oh, no,
was
that's-
given 2 people on the
That's real
commission.
estate tax issue.
Okay.
That's another issue.
Okay.
That's a big bomb to fall.
Well, let's go to your next comment.
Next comment is that there's discussion tonight in regard to the PFAF drilling and the wells that are being explored on the grounds of the Beverly Airport. We have experienced PFAF contamination in Middleton. So we are wondering, where's the groundwater carrying these chemicals over? So that's why those drills, those wells are still being monitored, because we don't know where that water's going. So that $25,000 is a drop in the bucket. That's gonna come
Yes.
back, that's gonna come back to us.
In closing,
In closing, I brought to you a list of rules and regulations that were dictated by Chapter 90, I believe, or Chapter 59. And you have the whole complete list.
packet, It was a packet.
The packet that I gave you was just a smidgen
Right.
of what is really in existence. And I have also noticed that your legal counsel was at your meetings 3 months ago, 4 months ago, going around with this book, and they were making changes to those rules. So I think the public needs to know what kinds of changes are being made, because those are dictated by the state legislature.
I believe the rules and regulations are on our website.
I believe so. They have two documents, rules and regulations and minimum standards for
Right.
doing
Well,
business.
And all those changes, I don't know if they've been
Chapter 9 is
updated.
on the state's website.
They have not been updated, and they are very hard to find. And your webmaster here that you sort of dismissed, that's a very good issue, because your website sucks.
And I thank you, I appreciate that feedback. We definitely we've talked about making some changes to make it much more user-friendly. You know, I'll agree with that. Well, thank you so much.
Also, in closing,
In closing,
in September, you had a very emotional meeting in this facility. And I have a record of that, all filmed and ready for
I've
you
watched
if you want it.
I've
If you
watched
watched it, good. That meeting was a very good expression on your part to listen to the neighbors. The thing is that nothing has really happened since then. I mean, everybody was putting their emotions into action, but since then, nothing has happened. The noise continues. Yesterday afternoon, between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 jets coming across over my house. And I'm in Middleton almost. So the thing is, nothing has changed. We need to have some action. And that's my conclusion.
thank you. Appreciate your comments. And we'll follow up on some.
I still can't get through on your phone. Your message machine is always full.
You must be calling my landline, because it hasn't worked in 10 years. The only reason we have the landline is,
No, it's your
My-
cell phone. It's your cell phone. I got it from your.
I don't think so.
I do.
So, thank you so much.
Mr. Jeffrey, 5 seconds, please.
5 seconds from there,
Okay.
please.
I'm just backing up what he said. All fuel is delivered and stored in Danvers, which puts an extra burden on the fire department, police department, and everything. And yet Danvers gets nothing per gallon of the fuel.
That's right.
So they should, because they are the ones that are protecting it. They're the first responders, and they're the ones who have the training.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just gonna say that the 2 cities, they need to fight it out. This commission isn't gonna go in and negotiate for Danvers, or they've got lawyers, and they've got mayors, town
That's why I
managers, and
just
city
want to
councils.
educate
If
the
they wanna go at it,
commission
that's
on
fine.
these items.
Thank you. That's nice. Good to know. When the 2 cities decide they wanna do something, they'll.
It's not, Danvers is not a city, it's a town.
It's a town. There's nothing else on here except that I'd like to make a motion that we go into, let me get the verbiage right. I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session in order to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may be detrimental, have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And I so do declare that it would be detrimental to discuss potential leases in an open forum. So,
You also need to say, do you plan on coming back
Oh.
out into public session?
and we will not be coming back into public session at the close of executive session. So, I've made the motion, do you want a second? Somebody silence Commissioner Doxey. Okay, so we'll have a roll call vote to go into executive session. Commissioner Doxey. To go into executive session. Commissioner Henry.
I'll abstain.
Commissioner Zubrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Rivette. Commissioner Treffry is yes. And Commissioner?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. We'll let everyone.